Game Informer. The last, is there another magazine or is this the last one? Like, I think this is the last one.
Are Dungeon and Dragon magazines even out anymore? Is that
I don't know.
Anymore?
I don't, maybe.
Because I used to get Dungeon and Dragon. They were two separate mags. I don't know if they're.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember Dragon magazine.
Yeah, Dungeon was another one.
PC Gamer's mostly online, though. Do they still do a print?
You can tell that you're all not from. You can tell that all of you not from Europe. Edge is still around, isn't it?
True. No, Edge is. Yeah, Edge is. I would say Edge is the Game Informer of Europe. Does that make sense, Rami? Are you going to take offense to that?
He's got a face, dude.
I think that's the Rami's offended face right there. I think that's what that is.
I'm gonna miss Game Informer.
Totally, yeah.
I am too.
It's been a staple. 33 years. They say it in the opening statement of that farewell. It's wild. This is, I think, if you've interacted, if you've ever been in a fucking GameStop, which 99% of us have at one point in our lives, you've seen a Game Informer. You've been asked to subscribe to a Game Informer and get it shipped to you because you bought some random game. Or you've had game announcements back before, the internet was kind of a big thing. Game Informer got a lot of the scoops, pretty much all the time.
Now, was Game Informer one of those magazines that shipped demo disc with it or no?
Maybe in the early days.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't even remember that.
Yeah.
Those are the only ones I ever bought.
Yeah.
I remember all the weird merch items with Nintendo Power. That was fun.
Totally.
Weird little cards and things like that. I loved that.
Well, even the covers, I think, of some of those old Nintendo Powers are just fantastic. Like all gold Zelda version, when I think Zelda 64 came out, all that stuff. It was fantastic. And Game Informer also had fantastic covers that they would always work with the developers on. And that was kind of a big deal, I think, more recently, whenever they would get a big reveal that had some online component to it of a video series or something like that. But yeah, Game Informer is done. And they did in the most 2024 way of doing it. Literally came as a surprise to every employee that I saw. They were locked out of their back end, and they weren't allowed to really save or, take anything with them that they had worked on from the company. So
the part that pisses me off more than not going back to your desk is not being able to have that moment to network with the people that you've been working with the entire time.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the Slack was shut down immediately or whatever. And
that's a big deal. That's a very, very big deal because that's how you get back on your feet quickly in this industry. Yeah. Losing those contacts like that is horrific. You may not even have access to social media with those people. You may not have them on Facebook or Twitter or any of that kind of stuff. You have no other way of contacting them because you guys work together every day. It sucks, man. Yeah. It sucks bad.
Yeah, they blew up the site too, as Chad is pointing out now. The site
it's gone.
It's gone.
It's done.
You can still find the results on Google. You can find the result on Google. It just links to the fucking message.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
If I seem angry this week, it's because I am.
No, yeah. I mean this is bad. As someone who aspired throughout college to be a game journalist, Game Informer was up there. Is being the creme de la creme, the holy grail, as it were. And they just had everything deleted.
I remember the first time I was in Game Informer.
Yeah.
It was a big deal.
Big deal, sure.
My first time indiegames.com, my first time on Kotaku.com, my first time on Game Informer, those were milestones. And Game Informer was a big one because they were the serious ones. Indie Games was the indie people. And Kotaku was sort of the weird shit back in the day. And then Game Informer was that was serious.
That was the money. That was the real one. The one that
big
meant
leagues.
Yeah.
The New York Times of games.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess
something like that. The New York Times of old.
You said Washington Post, whatever. You can just. I was just trying to pick a big newspaper. No one reads a fucking newspaper. Forgive me. So, do we know why certain things that started off like magazines transition better? Did they not transition well enough into the internet age, or?
Well, they tried.
just-
I mean, I think the most recent thing they tried to do was some sort of like subscription Patreon-esque situation at GameInformer, where you subscribe and get access to X content, blah blah blah. And that was, I want to say, barely even a year old, unless time passed faster than I think it did. But it was fairly recent that they tried that, and it seems like it didn't go very well. But ultimately, I think like game journalism at this point, it's so focused on the like breaking news aspect rather than like, opinion or anything like that. That just goes to content creators and YouTube type folk to have like brash opinions that audience, as it were. But yeah.
Honestly, it pisses me off. Like, I really don't like where games journalism is now. And a lot of it, as you said, it is get to the press as quickly as possible so you can get those clicks, so you can actually get that money. And there's just shitloads of redactions that take place. There's shitloads of games that just get bashed on bad information. There's shitloads of devs that get thrown under the bus on bad information, and they have to retract it later. But the damage has already been done, because the way that the media works right now is people go and absorb that into their belief structure instantly.
Yeah.
And they repeat it online ad nauseum forever. They just keep doing this. And then because of that, it never dies, even if the story was incorrect, even if the story was wrong, or it was an opinion piece that people absorb as fact. And I hate the shit out of it. So seeing someone like GameInformer go down like this, dude, that's a detriment to all of us. 100%. Yeah. That's a detriment to the entire industry. It's a detriment to every player. And the problem is the only way you can monetize this shit now is if you are sensationalist, because we're running off ad revenue. How else are you going to monetize this? You can't. Ad revenue is the way to monetize these platforms now. And if you don't have the eyes, because you're not being sensationalist, you're not drawing them all in, you don't have the money.
Yeah.
Sucks.
Yeah.
There's a few efforts to do, right? Like, I mean, I've always been very impressed, and I know people always make fun of me for this, but I've always been very impressed with how IGN has managed to keep running. They have really good editorial, like they have super in-depth coverage. They really research some of their stuff. Like, I've rarely seen them have to go back on anything they've reported. But also, if you like the more indie style of doing it, things like Aftermath, right? Like
great,
Patreon, Patreon based, like writing, like they get the stuff. Because they can, right? And they're 4 great people that started that website. They report on all the shit that really hurts the industry as well. But they also will happily report shit that is just like a little painful, where that's technically their job. The job of the Games Press is to hold us accountable as a games industry.
Right.
That's what they're there for. But to make things run, to make things walking, you get a lot of websites that kind of have to like walk the line between ad and journalist. And that's where shit gets a little iffy.
Yeah.
So
it's been really interesting to see people like Jeff Gersman talk about the idea of like content creators and streamers and kind of that whole thing happen and become almost a singular entity over the past like decade or two. I think he's got a really interesting look at all of that. That in a lot of ways I agree with as one side of that coin and him being the other side of it. But
speaking of IGN, sorry, go.
I was going to say, I think it's one of the interesting things about being a streamer is a lot of people will come to me and they're like, please show off my game. It's the only way that we're going to succeed. Right. And the thing that I always try to tell people is that's not true. It's not. What you should be doing is you should be focusing on your community more than anything, because those people are going to carry you, whether I have a good experience with your game or not. And if I show the game off to a whole bunch of people and it's not ready for that huge influx of people, it's going to leave a bad impression to a dramatically large amount of players.
True.
So like there's tons of times where like people will try to approach me for sponsorships and we just turn them down because I'm like, dude, you should be building a Discord. You should be talking to your players. You should have more of a community built up for this so that you can have a better connection with them, because right now there's no connection and there's nowhere for them to go to have that connection with you. So even if I did play it, you get a bunch of people that hit your Steam page and bounce because there's nowhere for them to run to. It is about that kind of connection if you're trying to sell games, man. And like it blows me away because streamers right now whether it's in media or in advertising, are seen as this weird silver bullet that's just going to save it, and that's not the case. And that's speaking as a streamer, right? Like this, like it's wild to watch because like having to explain to them like, no, don't give me money, go focus on this, and that's I think it's the more correct take on that stuff.
It is. It's hard though, right? Like game developers are generally not like you all. Like they tend to not be streamers. They're not good community builders. Like they want to, but they don't know how. And even if they can fix the game part, they don't have the reach part. So like is that weird thing where like there is no right solution besides the long road. The long road is too expensive for too many people right now to survive. So game development is just hard. Like commercial game development is easier than ever, but commercial game development, really hard. It's really hard. Like indies, not easy. And then just seeing somebody like Thor stream and go like, he gets it. What if we can pay him money and he plays the game? And then you get that's the easy way of thinking. The amount of time, because I consult indie companies, the amount of time I ask indies like, "What's your marketing strategy?" and they say like live streamers. I'm like, that's not a marketing strategy. That's a word. That's what you just said a word to me. That's not a strategy. Give me the strategy, and they're like,
It's
big streamers.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you say that because I see it through a different lens of like so many streamers now, so many bigger streamers are like putting their name with a game and saying, hey, I'm a part of this team, or hey, I'm announcing that I'm working with this team, or, hey, we made this game together and they're a producer on it type deal. And so that's kind of a route that folks are going now, I think, with content creators being attached to a game.
It's something to understand when you do that, though. You're being judged by that content creator, not just the content of the game. Sure. And that is a double-edged sword, because if that dude did something stupid, got canceled, any of that kind of shit falls off, whatever, your game can die.
No,
it's not because your game's bad.
Yeah, there's no way to relate to this at all.
Zero
of anything.
exception. Yeah, this is purely hypothetical.
Whatsoever.
Fully hypothetical. But like that's the risk with it. There's also another one too with influencer marketing kind of shit, right? Where you hire a guy to go and play your game, and let's say you have a linear RPG. It's a storyline driven one, right? And you have that dude go and play that game, and he plays the entire thing on stream. And the players have nothing left to discover, no new story left to find. It's fully spoiled for them. One of the things that I did was I played Outer Wilds on stream. And I told everyone in the community, I said, do not watch this stream if you haven't played this game. 2/3 of the audience fell off instantly. We lost like 8,000 people, just gone, right? And I was like, good, now we can play the game. And the reason why is because you can only play Outer Wilds once. And once it's played, it's done. And once you experience that, it's over. And I want people to play that game. So like there are other things that you have to think about if you're going that route for marketing and selling off your stuff. You have to think about it. And it's not just we throw it in front of a streamer, it's going to make $1 billion. Like it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's funny that you mentioned that, JP, because I have that from the game development community. I'm seeing a lot of like streamers become attached to games.
Yeah.
At the moment.
Yeah, I mean the elephant in the room is Co and PirateSoftware are both, I think, doing that.
Right. But there's people who come from development who end up streaming. There's people from streaming who end up involved in development. There's people from streaming who only attach their name to a game so that it has an opportunity of selling better.
Right.
That part I don't like at the moment, and I'm seeing a lot of that. I also have some thoughts about some streamers becoming publishers.
Mm-hmm.
Like similarly, I feel like that I don't know if I am entirely up for that. It gets a little iffy, right? Now you're both there's like financial incentive on the game side and on the stream side. That's a little that's too round. I don't like that circle, right? So it's that kind of situation where it's like, there's weird movement. We're trying to figure it out. Like the economy is weird. People have less money to spend.
Yeah.
Publishing is a big opportunity in games, and it's safer than game development. Publishing is safer than game development. Right, like you make a few bets, you have more money.
I think it can be if you are putting yourself out there and doing it in a way that is detrimental to the dev. I think it's safer. I think any type of publishing agreement you're going to be entering with a developer, there needs to be risk on both sides. And more often than not, I see publishing agreements where there is no risk on the side of the publisher.
Yeah.
There's recoup fees, where the developer gets dramatically large risk. One of the problems I kept seeing was how shitty all of the publishing field was across the industry and how bad some of my friends had it. It's rough, dude. Like, I have friends who make some of the like really well selling indie games, and one of the worst things that I ever got to hear was from the programmer on that team said, I used to make games and now I make money, because he switched his job to Microsoft. It killed me, dude. Like, that was the worst goddamn thing that I had heard. And it was just, it's rough as shit. So one of the things that I did, and it's funny because you were just talking about like influencers becoming publishers. I'm the director of strategy for Off-Brand Games now, which is a publisher, specifically because I don't want this to happen in our industry anymore. And the only way I could do that is like, okay, I could sit on Twitter and bitch about it, or I could do something about it. But I think you're right. I think there's a lot of cases where influencers will go and be like, streamers will be like, I'm going to go and be a publisher now so I can make a bunch more money. And it's like, no, dude, be a publisher because you want to fix shitty publishers out there. Like, there's a reason for that. Make good games.
I mean, and like, be aware, right? Like, I have my own investment fund as well. Like, it's not like I'm not doing a thing where there's a circle. Like, that's, if you want to fix things in this industry, money is going to get involved. Like, there's not really a way around it, because that's how the industry works, right? But I think there is a really big difference between people who know the industry, who have been developers, who have worked on a game, versus a lot of streamers that are now just coming in and they're just like, hey, we know how to solve it. We'll publish good games. And it's
I got a bunch of viewers. It'll solve everything. I get it.
And like, it backfires. It goes to shit. It's like a weird thing. And it's happened fairly consistently. And then the developers call me and they're like, hey, it turns out our influencer publisher doesn't actually know shit. Now what?
Yeah.
Like, and they're not good deals. Like, I'll be really honest. Very often those deals, not very.
It's usually equity in the deal. I mean, I got
equity, like whatever. The developer gets no money, so there's no risk on the influencer / publisher side. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I have a short list of other publishers that I think are actually doing a really good job, and the ones that I think don't, I have seen deals as high as 70% to the publisher in perpetuity, which is like, holy shit, man. For shit like just localization support. And you're like, dude, you're giving 70, and they're like, yeah, so I can sell all around the world. I was like, yeah, to no dollars. Like, you'll make nothing. Like, it's because you have to think about the Steam cut, then you have to think about the publisher cut, and then you have to think about paying your people, and you have to think about all the taxes they're in, dude. Like, you end up making less than minimum wage. Like, it's a mess. So like, I think that's one of the biggest things. And even at Off-Brand, right? Like, we've turned away so many different devs, and it's not because we couldn't get a deal there. It's because, like, dude, this would just be parasitic. Like, you don't need a publisher. You need to just make your game. You've got everything you need. You've got a community around you. Do it, right? And like, I know that there's other publishers that are like, oh yeah, we'll do that 50%, and like, and I've seen it, and it pisses me off like nothing you could believe.